Right. On April the 12th, 1913, which was a Saturday, Nechama Yampolsky gave birth to a baby girl, Celia Yampolsky, also known as Cyril Bat Shloima. Also on that day, in Great Britain, the Spectator weekly magazine was founded and still exists to this day.
Stupid magazine.
Which might interest Mary. A cricket pavilion at Tunbridge Wells Cricket Ground was burnt to the ground by suffragettes, who left a calling card with a picture of Mrs. Pankhurst.
Oh, right.
I know I'm right. And this is for our American cousins, for our colonial relatives. The US Postmaster General proposed the segregation of black and white employees in the US Postal Service and was unopposed, leading to active segregation of bathrooms and lunchrooms for the Postal Service employees. Apart from Celia's birth, nothing else much happened that day. But look what you have seen and lived through your life.
So there's the other one.
Two World Wars, inauguration of flight, women getting the votes, the founding of the State of Israel, public telephone service, television, talking movies, computers, internet, email, to name just a few. Celia was one of 6 children: Lou, Anne, Mark, Harry, Sally, and after her, Mickey. Their parents were Solomon and Naomi. They lived initially in Mansfield Street in the East End of London, and Mum went to Teesdale Street School. She was keen on ballet dancing, and when she left school, went to work in the family cabinet making business, S. Turner Cabinet Work, as a secretary. She met our father, Alan, who had a fur skin business opposite the furniture factory, and they married in 1942 and lived in Ivor Court in the West End, subsequently moving to 7 Hazelmere Gardens, Finchley. I was born in 1944 and Mary followed in 1947. Unfortunately, Dad passed away in 1952 and then her life changed. She took over running the fur business Davis and Beeves for a few years. She had a great friend of the family, Irene Belinsky, whose husband was a great friend of our father, and also in the fur business, and who had died shortly after my father. And together, these 2 women were known as the Merry Widows of Garlick Hill, in London, which was the centre of the fur trade at the time. Mum subsequently sold the business and decided that she would go into partnership with her sister Sally, whose sons Jerry and Colin are here today, in a children's wear shop in Hemel Hempstead. But before this came to fruition, Sally and her husband Harry decided to emigrate to the States. Mum opened a small shop in Hemel on her own and ran this successfully, expanding to a larger shop after a few years. She commuted to Hemel every day in all weathers, and in those days there was no M1 motorway. We moved away from Hazelmere Gardens and lived with Bubba, Auntie Anne and Uncle Sol for a year in Tottenham, and then moved back to this flat when I was 17.
That's right.
After selling the shop, Mum worked for many years locally and ended her career at Samuelson's Film, where she finally retired at the age of 72. A few years after the death of my father, she found happiness with Moray Bloom, whom she shared many years. Mum, you're a remarkable woman, and have always supported both Mary and myself. You have 5 grandchildren who I know you adore, and who love and adore you. You have been blessed with 9 grandchildren. Your life has not always been easy, but you have faced adversity and problems, and dealt with them, especially bringing up 2 young children of your own. Your determination, strength of character, and fierce independence has sustained you throughout your life and brought you to this wonderful day. Mum, you achieved a great ambition only last weekend, to see your great-grandson Oliver on the bimmer at Mill Hill Shore reciting his bar mitzvah portion so beautifully. and you have other milestones to achieve in seeing Elliot and Chris celebrate their partnership, and in seeing Richard marry Jennifer, both this year. We all hope and pray that we will be together to celebrate many more family occasions. And now, my dear sister Mary.
Excuse me, I'm the master of ceremonies.
Oh, we wrote this on.
I've got such a small role, and they take me away. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the second speech of the afternoon, Mary Davis.
This is more of a lecture.
Yesterday, my brother and I nearly fell out completely. When he announced, we're always arguing. When he said, "I'm doing the speech because I'm the eldest, I can accept that, and because I'm a boy."
I agree.
Yes. That went down really well. Anyway, I did want to add. He said, and also he said, "Oh, if you start making a speech, it'll go on." Well, that's my profession. I'm a professor, so you know.
Can you hurry up?
But
You get paid by the hour.
you be quiet. You're not my son, I know. So you can have a Anyway, my point that I want to make about my mum is I'm glad Spencer has made all the chronological, points about when Mum was born, etc., etc. I just want to say a very few words about what I think are her remarkable qualities. She's got some bad points, actually, as a mother.
No, I know her.
No, come on.
It's not your mother. That is my mother. I just want to give you one example. I was in hospital once and I really wasn't very well, and I had to take my rings off because my fingers were swelling up, and I thought, whilst I've still got sense in my body, I better do it. And I wrapped them up in a piece of paper, and one was a diamond ring and it belonged to Auntie Anne. Very valuable diamond ring. And I threw it in the rubbish. And of course it went. It was taken away. When I got out of hospital, I said to my mum, and this I think is such a typical story about my mother, I said, "Mum, I've lost that ring. I've thrown it away." Actually, it was 3 rings. It was 2 platinum, one diamond. And do you know what my mother said? Rather than ever tell me off, she said, "As long as you're all right." That's the main thing. And I just think that was wonderful because it was thousands and thousands of pounds worth of jewellery. And that was, there were many examples like that, and it just brings tears to my eyes. In fact, I was talking about it only yesterday or the day before. So that tells you what sort of mother she was. She was not materialistic in that sense. She was just a good mother. The only thing that the only negative thing that I'm going to say is when I got presented a prize in Theda for being the best Hebrew scholar, and she'll never forgive me for this. And so I was expecting to get a very important book like a Rashi, Shulchan Aruch, or even a Tanakh, because there were the sort of books that, as a Hebrew scholar, and I was the only woman who had received this. I got up onto the bimah, which, as you might know, is the stage, and Rabbi Gellis, I remember him to this day, he said, "Congratulations," and he presented me with Florence Greenberg's Jewish cookery book.
It's an excellent book.
It might be an excellent book, but I was not, at the age of 14, I was not prepared to receive it. So I threw it onto the ground, much to the chagrin of my mother, who thought it was a terrible thing to do. And Gellis said to me, a Jewish woman is a malka, malka means queen, in her own home. I don't want to be a queen. No, I said, I don't want to be a queen. My mother then went and picked up the book, apologised to Rabbi Gellis for me, and I said, Mum, please don't apologise, the man did wrong. And she kept the book. Now I've actually got it. So Linda's got it now. Where's Linda?
I'm here.
You
You
should
can't
have
get
kept
it now. It's out of print. No, I've got my own.
Anyway, that's all I want to say. And Mum, I love you. I speak to you every day, probably twice or 3 times a day, as you know. And
I love you very much.
you're my mate, and I do love you very much.
One more speech, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all the, where is he, grandchildren. Elliot's going to say a few words. Come on, Elliot.
Yeah.
Perform.
But this is really important speech. I've actually got to write something.
Where?
I'm speaking for my grandma. So this is on behalf of the 5 grandchildren and the, is it 10?
9.
9
Great grandchildren.
Great-grandchildren.
great grandchildren. So a little bit of history. When Grandma was born in 1913, who was on the throne?
George the Fifth.
George V. And who was the Prime Minister? Asquith was Prime Minister. Emmeline Pankhurst was subject to 3 years of penal servitude.
Oh, not just Emily.
Quite right,
Sylvia.
I can hear my father saying. And women couldn't vote. So my grandma was born at a time when...
Let me ask one question.
No, let
Who was the president?
I was 1 year old.
It was a
Yeah.
president.
My grandma was born when time when women were second-class citizens, and yet she herself, as you've heard, has worked all her life and didn't retire from Samuelson Films until she was 70 years old.
72.
She's brought up 2 children on her own and ran her own business for many years. She's always known the meaning of hard work. And in 100 years there are bound to be good times and bad, but my grandma had a motto. And she's told me this many times, and I personally try and never forget it. Head up and get on with it. Grandma's always held her head high, and she's gone on with whatever life has thrown at her. And the other key element, I think, to Grandma's life has been her Jewishness. I remember the first Yiddish phrase she ever taught me, "Geh kacken up and young," which
That as well.
she taught you that as well, yeah. which means go cack in the sea. Very useful. And the other more useful one, fed gunner, which is a horse thief. I don't know why you taught me that one. You did say fed gunner.
That's what she wanted you to do.
A horse thief. I can imagine in Eastern Europe that might have been useful, but in Finchley not so useful. I asked Grandma on Friday what the key to her long life is, and she said family. My early recollections when Auntie Anne used to live here with Grandma, and the wonderfully exotic Aunt Sally used to come and visit.
Oh, yeah.
All in this flat, and these are my earliest childhood memories. And perhaps without knowing it, Grandma taught us that there could be nothing more special than being surrounded by family. And I'd like to think Grandma's brothers and sisters are with us in spirit today.
Yeah,
I believe they are. Her love of family, above all else, has kept her going. And the fact that we're all here today to show our unending love and respect to this marvellous lady is testament to that fact. I consider Grandma to be a personal inspiration, and I truly love her with all my heart, and I know all the grandchildren feel the same. We love you very, very much.
Well, Joe, I was going to say that.
Yeah.